This video gives a shout out to the Paranormal Database website, which has helpfully categorised by regions the sightings and reports of historic and modern paranormal occurrences. As mentioned on previous videos, I stay in the lowlands of Scotland and there are a few interesting entries in this area, so I'll cover a Cumbernauld one now, and if you like this type of content, I can save some more for future videos. We'll start off with a haunting from the village of Castlecary, which was once isolated but is now considered to be part of the far end of Cumbernauld. It lies right next to the Walled Park film studios and has a history of Roman activity in the area. Unlike the local tragic tale of Jean Lindsay's murder, which is widely documented and is based on court law and fact, the urban legend of Lizzie Baillie and her lover has blossomed into a spooky legend, and apparently a recorded haunting in Castlecary village within the castle. The story goes that Miss Baillie ran away from her parents after falling in love with a young laird from the town of Lennox. The shock of his outrageous behaviour killed her father. The issue with Lizzie's sweetheart was that he was a member of the Graham family who had participated in setting her family's castle alight during the years of persecution. People now say that Lizzie's ghost returns to her father's grave out of respect, and that the site of the house is also haunted by Sir William Baillie. So, this all sounds a bit strange, and is there any truth to this? I mean, who has seen these two apparitions? Let's find out. Because of where the village is situated, it's often recorded in Stirling, Falkirk, Cumbernauld and even Denny on certain historic records, so it can be quite difficult to verify historic facts. Also, as with the murder of Jean Lindsay, names were often spelled differently or written phonetically, so Lizzie could be ending with an IE, a Y, the full Elizabeth, or even Beth or Betty. The first place we should look is the local historical records for the castle at Castlecary. According to the Falkirk History Club, Castlecary Castle stands on the brink of an escarpment dominating the valley of the Red Burn, which forms the boundary between Stirlingshire and Dunbartonshire. The 15th century tower house at Castlecary is but the latest of a series of fortifications in the immediate area, which emphasise the strategic importance of the location. Few places have attracted so many historians and hence so many legends. This sounds promising. So, as I touched on earlier, there were a lot of Roman activities in the area, but we're going to focus on the time period when the castle was in use, so around 500-400 years ago. The castle was a tower house, and although families lived within it, it was also defensive. Lizzie's family, the Baillies, lived in the castle at the end of the 1600s, about 100 years after it was built. It had been erected on the site of an older fortification. There had been many affrays and skirmishes in the area prior to her residency, so if you'd like to find out more, I've left the direct link to the history website in the video description. According to Falkirk History Club, Patrick Baillie of Sherhill is presumed to be Lizzie's real father. He bought the castle and lands back in 1680. Then, 35 years later, in around 1715, it's said that the Castlecary Castle was burned to the ground by Highlanders, although this is not confirmed and may be misidentified. You see, Alexander Baillie, possibly Lizzie's nephew, was the owner of Castlecary Castle in 1715. He was also a keen historian, and yet he doesn't mention the incident in his own writings. I'm not about to butcher the song of the Ballad of Lizzie Baillie, so I will link this in the description as it's written in the original Scots language. There is also one other verse that mentions her in the year 1817. Shame light on the loggerheads that live at Castlecary, to let away the bonny lass the Highlandman to marry. It also seems that the Baillie family were prone to be written about because Alexander's sister Mary also ended up with a song written about her called Mary of Castlecary. But today we are focusing on Lizzie and her unfortunate love life, and also the supposed ghostly legacy of her and her father that has been left behind. Because of its clarity, I'm going to take the writing directly from the history website, and they use the historic version and translation of poor Lizzie's tale in the ballad. Then we'll look at paranormal activity later on. So, the ballad goes, Lizzie Baillie was the pride of her parents and they were determined that she would marry well. Her good looks and the promise of a sizable dowry meant that when she came of age, she had many suitors and yet scorned them all. Her father became suspicious and recalled that her correspondence had increased just after her return from a visit to her cousins near Loch Lomond some months before. One version of the story says that he opened up one of her letters and discovered that whilst she'd been away, she'd fallen in love with Donald Graham, a bonnet laird with only a few acres to his name. Her father forbade her from communicating with Graham. Needless to say, she did not obey his wishes, and on one occasion met Donald Graham in Castlecary Glen, now Castle Glen. This meeting was also discovered, and as a consequence, Lizzie was locked in a room in the tower until she came to her senses. However, through a friendly servant, she smuggled word out of her plight. One night, soon after, Donald Graham arrived at the castle with 3 retainers or farm servants. He had been informed which room she was held in and called up to her. He and his servants each held a corner of thick plaid material, and Lizzie launched herself towards it. She was caught and held safely. The small party, now of 5, disappeared off into the night. After this, her father was heartbroken, and it's said that it contributed to his early death. But Lizzie too also worried herself into an early grave because of what she'd done. As keen listeners may have picked up, the original legend, the one that I said at the start, gives Lizzie's father's name as William Baillie. So this may be a combination of 2 stories, one of Lizzie Baillie and one of a real historic battle in the year 1715, which was the Jacobite uprising, and this involved General William Baillie, who is said to be the second spirit that's seen at Castlecary Castle. Now, what about these hauntings at the old castle? Here are some photos showing how it looked in 2023. These are from the group Castles and Prominent Houses of Scotland on Facebook. Unfortunately, the castle is now privately owned and is a family home, so you can't go and visit it. Paranormal Files UK have a post on Facebook about the haunting, although there are no solid leads to follow up on. They do say that the story or sightings are considered to be regional and it's just local people that have seen the activity. Reportedly, the haunting consists of a sorrowful female ghost, believed by many to be Lizzie Baillie. She appears on the castle's periphery, often near the place she is said to have jumped to her death from or jumped into the stretched material when her lover rescued her. Strange music, described as harp or lute strings, which has been heard in empty rooms, despite no instruments being present.
Well, and adieu to your Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu to your ladies of Spain.
The local law attributes this to a travelling musician who was executed on the grounds, but whose body was never recovered.
In a short time to see you again.
Then the usual chilling drafts and phantom footsteps that have been reported near stairwells and some of the tower's upper levels. Some locals also claim that the Roman fort ruins nearby are also haunted, with ghostly soldiers said to patrol the ancient boundary in the dead of night. Now, unfortunately, and much to my dismay, there are no comments on this post, even though it's been really popular and it's had a lot of views. So I've been unable to contact any local witnesses myself. Many of these posts online are just regurgitating the same few sentences on the subject. The task of researching is also made harder by the fact that William and Lizzie Baillie are mentioned in documents for the famous Provan Hall in Glasgow. This property is open for paranormal groups to book and take part in investigations, so that might be something for the future. So, is this the end of the investigation into Lizzie Baillie's fated love? The ghosts at the castle? William Baillie, Patrick Baillie, Alexander Baillie? Well, maybe for all of that specifically, but not for the area. You see, as I don't drive, I tend to walk a lot in different places throughout Cumbernauld. Then, if I find something interesting, I'll go home and research it later. Strangely, in all of my times researching what I've just told you and what I'm about to tell you, I didn't realise that the nearby big house was actually Castlecary Castle. I assumed it was a large farmhouse because it's nearly impossible to see from the road or the woods. Here, I'll pull up Google Earth and show you what I'm talking about. Sometimes I walk from Whiteley's, along the Walton Burn, down past the waterfall and into Duns Wood, where the railway line is. The wood is in a very steep gorge at the bottom of the falls, so the only way to cross the raised railway track is either crossing under it, through the burn and wading through the water in the railway arch, or there's actually a smaller keyhole drain made of red brick at the far end. Basically, you're standing in a gorge, the railway is above you by maybe 30 or 40 feet, and then the ground slopes away the other side of the railway into what's called, I think, the Hidden Glen. So when you're walking through the drainage keyhole section, it's only a bit wet and boggy, maybe ankle high, shin high at most if there's been a lot of rain, but you can walk through it. Not that I'm advising you to do so, as it's very narrow, dark and slippery, and honestly it's a little bit spooky. But it takes you under the railway line and from Duns Wood into Castle Glen. But you have to understand, I didn't know it was called Castle Glen at this time, I just thought it was part of Duns Wood. Here are some photos of me and my friend Alison enjoying our walk. There is a beautiful little waterfall, a flat area, and the curve of the Red Burn, which makes a great picnic area. Unfortunately, due to its remote location, there has been a recent sadness attached to the area when a wild camper passed away and was reported as a missing person. Then his body was eventually found a lot later in this place in Castle Glen. Again, I didn't know this when I first visited the area with Alison or when I visited later on, but I can tell you, the glen here is very, very still. Anytime I visited, it's almost like the sound is completely muted, despite there being running water coming from the waterfall and the burn, and there's also the road nearby, the railway and a motorway. But for me to describe it accurately, it almost feels like you've entered another world once you come out of the drainage hole. This part of the wood, this part of the ancient Scottish glen, is full of ferns, fungi, and a definite atmosphere of some kind. It always felt when I went there that we were being watched, and when I've returned since several times, it's so eerily quiet that every stick breaking or breeze that rustles the leaves makes you on high alert and turn round. At the same time, it's also very peaceful in the sunshine, but definitely not a place for the faint of heart or a casual dog walker, as it's quite hard to get into, even if you come at it from the other end of the glen behind the Castlecary Castle. All I can say is, this is one of the true ancient places you'll find within Cumbernauld, and I'm really excited to find out that it's linked to an actual castle, even if the castle is now a family home. I'm going to look further into the Red Burn and the Roman activity around there, but for now, I'd highly recommend reading the article in the Falkirk History Club website that I've linked in the video description, because it's fascinating stuff, and there's also photos that I haven't included in the video. So, from Lizzie Baillie and General William Baillie, and I guess myself, I hope you have a wonderful evening, and remember, stay curious.